What's up, Grinders? Welcome to this Wednesday edition of Grinders Live, brought to you guys by DraftKings. I'm Boggs Light, and I'm joined by my co-host, Justin, otherwise known as STL Cardinals 84. What's going on, Cards? How you doing today?
Doing pretty good. I want to give a quick shout out to Peter Jennings, our co-host, for taking down the $1 million on DraftKings last night. Dominated on DraftKings all year long and paid off for him with that big ninth inning or the big 11th inning from the Red Sox last night. So couldn't happen to a nicer dude. Glad to see him win that, and a well-known face here in the Roto Grinders community taking down a live final. That's always good to see. So congrats to him and everybody else that was out there. It was a pretty loaded field. So you and I will just have to sit back here and toil away on a day-to-day basis while those guys win the $1 million. But it is good to see him win.
Yep, incredible finish to that tournament out there. A wild finish to the night in general. Really started out, kind of slow, but either way, congrats to Peter. You don't get as much praise as he's been getting, for being a dick. He's a true ambassador to the industry. Couldn't go to a more deserving guy. I'm certainly happy for him, and hopefully he doesn't get now he's a millionaire. Doesn't get too good to do a few Roto Grinders shows.
We're gonna need a new co-host on the air here soon, so apply now since Peter's gonna ditch us all now that he's a millionaire.
Yep. All right. Well, speaking of DraftKings, that's our sponsor. Some interesting tournaments out there today, even for a Wednesday. Quite a bit of overlay in some of these games going on here with just over an hour to go. So go ahead and head over there and check it out because that's who we'll be talking about today. But if you're ready, Justin, let's go ahead and jump right into starting pitching. It's a loaded field today.
Hey, we got some pitchers to talk about finally for one of these nights that we're on the air. It's nice to see some names up there at the top. We don't have to stretch this time.
Yeah. Well, who are we liking? Because there are quite a few options on the board tonight.
Yeah, and a lot of it's going to come down to how much salary you have to spend. I mean, obviously, Kershaw is probably your top dog, as he is anytime he takes the mound, but that $14,800 price tag, really steep. Hard to make him fit in a lineup, that you like with a lot of bats unless you get some punt plays. So, although he's the top option, when it comes down to price, in terms of salary, not David Price, but when it comes down to salary, I don't know if he's the guy that you want to, make sure you pay $14,800 for tonight. And the good news is that if you don't think you can afford that, you can go down to a guy like David Price, who's $2,100 cheaper. Decent matchup against the Yankees at home, better pitcher's park than if they were playing in New York. Or you could go down to Corey Kluber, who's $3,100 cheaper, has 25 strikeouts in 21 innings this year against the White Sox, has almost 10 strikeouts per 9 innings on the year. If I had to guess, I think a lot of people will head to Kluber tonight with his price tag being $3K cheaper than Kershaw. But with those three guys, it all kind of depends on where you fall with salary left to spend on your pitchers because, they're all solid options, Kershaw, Price, and Kluber. Wouldn't have a problem rolling any of those three guys out there, and for me it's just going to come down to how the rest of my team looks. If I'm comfortable fitting Kershaw in there, I'll happily take him. Otherwise, I wouldn't mind pivoting down to one of those other two guys. And even going cheaper, I think you'll see a lot of people on Tehran against the Mets. I think you'll see a lot of people on Latos against the Cubs. Simply because of how bad that Cubs lineup looks tonight without Anthony Rizzo in there. Luis Valbuena's hitting cleanup for the Cubs. I don't love the upside of either of those two guys. And the main issue with both of them, Tehran and Latos, compared to the top three guys, is that they don't strike as many guys out. So I do think they're a clear notch below, but they're also significantly cheaper. So if you want to go that route, I don't have a problem with it. And then I actually think you'll see a lot of people on Tim Hudson, similar to Madison Bumgarner last night. Even Jake Peavy the night before was upwards of 30% owned in some GPPs. So Tim Hudson at 6,500 against the Rockies at home, I think you'll see a lot of people on him. So those are kind of the 6 guys really that I'm looking at tonight. Kershaw, Price, and Kluber at the top, Tehran and Latos in the middle, and then Hudson if you want to go cheaper.
Okay. I certainly can't fault that strategy, and it's a strategy that I think I'm going to be employing in my lineups over on FanDuel, especially in tournaments. But you get over to our sponsor site, DraftKings, and when Kershaw has his best game, he's significantly farther ahead than the rest of the field. So for that reason, I'm going to be paying up for him tonight on DraftKings. I'm going to take my chances and roll the dice over on FanDuel because, even if he has one of his incredible games, that's only like around a 3, 4, maybe sometimes even 5-point difference from the next best pitcher of the night, and I just think that you can gain that edge by having Kershaw in your lineups tonight, because hey, he really is in a league of his own. He comes into tonight. Don't need to spend too much time talking about the stats, but he's basically in all the categories that I look at, on top of the rest of the field tonight. It will be difficult, but there are a few value plays spread throughout throughout the league tonight that I think have some upside that can pretty much ensure a decent lineup built around Kershaw. My number 2, it's no surprise, I'm all over David Price as well. Since putting on a Tigers uniform, he's got that energy back. Not that he never had it, but they're slumping big time. And a matchup at home, he was great there in his last outing. Comes in with great stats, high K percentage, very efficient. These are the guys. They're reason they're so heavily priced on their sponsor DraftKings. It's because they're very reliable, and very seldom do they blow up in your face. Obviously, I'm sure people will talk about Kershaw's last start in Arizona, which he got rocked. Really, that was
different team, man.
Yeah, that was early on in the year. He was a little rusty, coming off injury, but you look what he's been doing ever since then. And I think that unless you hit all your hitters and both of your pitchers go off, that you might be regretting not having Kershaw or Price in your lineups tonight. Going down the line, I'm with you. I do like Kluber a lot, especially because of his high strikeout potential on the road. But in a decent matchup against a White Sox team that strikes out in bunches, as we all know. And really going down from there, not a whole lot else I love, in particular with respect to our sponsored DraftStream, because it's an efficiency site. I can see the merit to going for Tehran. And really, my number 4 after Tehran, it's going to be Marcus Stroman. I just think at that price, especially in a GPP, you could take a Kershaw, get your pretty much guaranteed points, a solid start, take a risk on Stroman, and that'll give you the salary you need to really kind of load up the rest of your lineup or make it more competitive than it would be if you had Price and Kershaw, or if you decided to go that route tonight. But Stroman, high strikeout guy, fantastic numbers at home, and really fantastic against Boston all season long. He's dominated them in both of his starts against them. And if I'm not mistaken, I believe both those starts came in a game that followed R.A. Dickey pitching, which I think has some kind of effect. I don't have any stats to back that up, but if you're going from seeing a knuckleball coming at you 80 miles an hour to 95 mile per hour two-seam fastball, it's a big adjustment that needs to be made. Obviously, Boston did score some runs, but pretty much throughout the whole part of the year, they've been a pretty lackluster offense. And I think that Stroman at home, trying to get back on track after one horrendous outing and a decent one in his last start, I believe. I think he's in a terrific spot, and I really love his price tonight on DraftKings. Any thoughts on Stroman?
Yeah, I think he gives you some upside for sure. I'd put him there in a GPP. I think he's a great option. I still think, and I've said this tons and tons of times on the air, that people are going to go after Hudson, but he's one of those pitchers that doesn't scare you to fade because his upside is, what's his upside? 4 strikeouts? He's just not going to strike anybody out. So, I'd prefer to go for a guy that's got some upside. Stroman, you could easily go out there and get 10 Ks against the Red Sox tonight. Sure, he's not as safe of a pick, but I think, it's a great GPP play just to get somebody with some upside. Another guy, what about Gallardo tonight against the Padres? I know some people ask about him. Not a guy that I'm on tonight, but I can sort of see the matchup. I wrote him up this morning. Just if you're looking for somebody cheaper, Gallardo is insanely cheap for this matchup, so it would worry me to take him. He's been so up and down, but I think there's going to be some people on him too tonight.
Yeah, and I think that taking on the Padres in Petco Park, it's I would prefer Stroman because of the upside, but I think Giovanni's going to have a decent start. In all honesty, I like him a little bit more on FanDuel, where just the win is more important, because I do expect him to take care of business tonight. But again, he's just not a guy that is going to go out and strike 12 people out. He just doesn't have that stuff anymore. But I do think he's in a good spot to get a win. I think the Brewers are going to get to Despaigne, who's starting to unravel here as people are starting to kind of pick up on his tendencies as a pitcher. Gallardo, I expect the again, it's more about strikeouts for me, but I think that if you're looking for a safe, cheaper option, perhaps in your cash games, I do prefer him over Hudson for what it's worth. But again, I just don't see the upside that I do from a Marcus Stroman. And I know Boston can be patient, and they're not the league leaders in strikeouts, but it's more of a Stroman's numbers at home and against Boston, and coming at a cheaper price, a significantly cheaper price, which will have me taking that risk in my GPPs, to help load up the rest of my lineup. I guess you could kind of group Latos, Fister, Gallardo, and Tim Hudson, all kind of in that same group of, more so, I just like them a little bit more on FanDuel. I like them all to get the win. I like them all to pitch good games. But again, any hit, walk they give up, it's not going to be able to be mitigated by a ton of strikeouts on the back end of it. So I just don't see the upside from all 4 of those guys tonight. But one guy that does intrigue me, because he's been a model of efficiency all season long, and I'm curious to hear your thoughts on him. How about Phil Hughes tonight?
Yeah, I saw some people mentioning him in the chat. I think his upside's limited by the matchup with Kansas City. They're a good contact hitting team. But the good news for Hughes is that it's a pitcher's park, and Kansas City doesn't hit a lot of home runs either. It seems to me that the weather's a little bit of a concern there, so I would certainly monitor that if you're on a guy like Phil Hughes tonight. But I think he's a great contrarian play. You can almost be assured that he's not going to be highly owned. With Tehran at 89 and Latos at 88, those are names that people will go for with the matchups they have tonight. I think Hughes is a nice pivot if the weather is okay. I'm not on him, so I didn't check that real close. But if you're on him, make sure you check it up to game time. I think he's a nice pivot at that price, $8,700. Even Wheeler has some upside. I'd prefer Hughes over Wheeler if I was just debating between the two. Sneaky tonight, I think. Because you can almost be sure that he's going to be, say, under 10% owned.
Yeah, both those guys. There just are a lot of options, but again, in terms of upside, I do agree with you. I know Infante's out of the lineup. The Kansas City bats really haven't. They've certainly been missing him, and you get a few strikeout guys. If Willingham was in there in addition to Raul Ibanez, I think that would kind of bump Hughes' K potential. But I'm definitely with you. It's a tough one, and I think the fact that there, is a slight weather concern in that game is, going to be, the deciding factor of whether or not I end up rolling out Hughes or not. But again, he's extremely efficient. Comes in with the lowest walk rate among all the pitchers going today. And again, it's just more of a play on the matchup than him not being able to go out and have a decent game. I think he's going to go deep into that game. I do think Minnesota's going to win that game. They should at least with Liam Hendricks on the other side. But again, where the win isn't as important, you could kind of group him along with the Fisters. The Gallardo. I keep forgetting his name, Timmy Hudson. I can't believe that. And just the trustworthy guys, but very little upside. So I'm just not going to. I don't think I'm going to be going that route tonight. I'm probably going to try and squeeze in a Kershaw, Price, Kluber, some combination of those three, along with Stroman if I need it, because I do like his upside and his price. So is there anyone else you want to bring up here?
No, I mean, I don't think you really want to venture outside of those guys. That's 7 or 8 guys that give you some nice upside tonight, and pretty safe that some of those guys are going to be the higher scoring pitchers of the night.
Yep. All right. Well, then let's go ahead and move on to catcher. What are you liking a backstop tonight?
Well, it's 3 days facing the Rockies, which means 3 crappy left-handed starters that have been a nice little boost to Buster Posey's fantasy value. Hit the game-winning home run last night, and certainly should be in line for another good game against Franklin Morales this evening. Morales, a .405 weighted on base percentage allowed to right-handed batters this year. That's not good. So Posey, certainly, assuming he's in the lineup, their lineup has not come out yet. Assuming he's in there tonight, certainly a great play once again against another below-average left-handed starter. I think I'm going to put him in as my top catcher option of the night pretty safely. Still $4,400 on DraftKings. That's not an overly exorbitant price tag. I think you can make it work tonight, unless you're rostering, say, Kershaw and Price. You might have a little bit more trouble fitting him in. But I think he's your stud of the night at catcher. I do like Devin Mesoraco a little bit. If you haven't followed Jacob Turner, he's making his first start for the Cubs tonight. Very notorious as a reverse splits pitcher. He struggles a lot more with right-handed bats. That gives a bigger boost to guys like Devin Mesoraco and Todd Frazier for the Reds, not the lefties that you would normally assume, like Jay Bruce, Billy Hamilton hitting from the left side, those guys. So Mesoraco I like. He's been in a little bit of a slump. His price has come down to $3,800. Certainly he's got that home run upside, so I like him in that matchup against Turner. I like Vogt for Oakland again. He's batting cleanup tonight against Brad Peacock, who can get blown up at any time. So those 3 guys are the guys that I have the most exposure to tonight. There are a lot of cheaper options that are starting today. I'm not going for any of them. Certainly not going for the Tuffy Gosowich had a good game against Clayton Kershaw, the first time that they faced each other this year, and I think he's got some decent BVP. No, not going there at all. If there was any upside to be gained from a cheap end catcher, I guess it would probably be from Hannigan, but I don't really care for that matchup either. I just don't like a lot, at the cheap price tags at catcher tonight. I think the cheapest I would go would probably be Mesoraco at $3,800 on DraftKings to feel comfortable. I mean, obviously, if you want to punt for a GPP, you can pick one of those guys that's down there, like Travis d'Arnaud, Roberto Perez for Cleveland. There's just a bunch of guys down there that are starting tonight. None of them are in real good spots. For me, I'm going to stick to Vogt, Posey, and Mesoraco on most of my squads.
Yep. Sadly, there's not a whole lot. I do agree with you to punt at catcher tonight. It's going to be a night where you're pretty much, forced to pay up. Obviously, you don't have to, but again, there's not a lot of punt options in decent hitting spots tonight. So I'm definitely with you. I've got Posey as my top option after, burning 2 home runs last night. Really swinging the bat well lately. Matchup versus Franklin Morales, like you said, gives up a WOBA over 400 to right-handed batters. Could be another good one from Posey, who's, after kind of I guess you would say by his standards, like a slower start to the season, got 17 home runs, and he's got that batting average, ticking towards 300 where you expect it to be. So Posey's not going to be my top option, obviously, assuming he's in the lineup. Make sure you guys wait for that. But going down after that, I'm with you on Vogt and Mesoraco, but I think over on DraftKings, you do have the luxury of multi-position eligibility. I think this is a good night to play Carlos Santana in that spot if you can afford him. Batting cleanup, not catching, no wear and tear on those knees, but catcher eligibility and tremendous upside against Hector Noesi. I know that Noesi has reverse splits and he typically gets crushed by right-handed batters, but I'm just not a fan of him in general. I think that Cleveland is going to put up some runs similar to the way they did last night, even though I didn't quite expect them to get to Quintana. But either way, after Noesi, you get that White Sox bullpen, who I know for a fact coughed up a few more runs last night, and are primed to do it again tonight, especially in that hitter's park out there in Chicago. Kind of going down, I don't hate either Derek Norris or Diana Navarro at moderate prices, although I do tend to prefer to play them versus left-handed batters. And, really, I guess the only two punt options that I would even consider tonight, one more of a safer cash game type play, that's Kurt Suzuki, and then your ultimate upside guy is Caleb Joseph, who finally is no longer minimum price anymore. But, a guy that is really boom or bust, he's the definition of it. I mean, he's hitting 228, but he does have 8 home runs. And in that ballpark, Smiley, not as good against right-handed batters as he is versus lefties. I think if you absolutely have to punt, you take a risk on Joseph in your GPPs, or you slide down to a Kurt Suzuki in your cash games. That's probably the route I'd go, because I'm not going to dick around with the Jordan Pacheco or a Tuffy Gosowich, the guy you brought up. I think the only reason he got 3 hits off Kershaw is because Kershaw felt bad for him and just piped a few fastballs right down the middle. But, so, again, there's a number of different ways you can go, but I think we're in agreement that it's a night you pay up and look elsewhere for some solid value plays. Anything else you want to add?
No, that's about it for catcher.
Let's go ahead and move on to first base.
All right. Options are maybe a little bit thinner than you'd first expect at first base tonight. Some tough matchups for a lot of the guys. The Tigers guy, the DraftKings has finally brought V-Mart's price up a little bit. Don't think I'm on him tonight. He's got more power against left-handed pitching this year. I think I'd definitely rather have Cabrera if you're going to take one of the 2 Tigers guys. And I think they're in play. Green got hit around a little bit in his last start against the White Sox. So I think they're in play tonight if you want to go there. Definitely would take them ahead of Ortiz, who's been banged up recently, and then Abreu has a tough matchup against Kluber tonight. And, if you go down a little bit farther, Encarnacion, I think, will be another popular pick this evening. Be careful if you're playing on a site where you set your rosters earlier or they don't show the notifications of the starting lineups. Anthony Rizzo not playing for the Cubs tonight. He's a little banged up, so make sure you don't have him in your lineups. But in terms of the mid-range, I think my favorite pick tonight is LaRoche, assuming his back is okay, which they're saying that he just didn't play last night as a precaution, plus they were facing a left-hander in Cole Hamels, and he did pinch hit late in the game. So I don't think there's too much to be concerned about there. I think LaRoche is fine at 4,400. Going against Kyle Kendrick, a guy who cannot get left-handed batters out, struggled with them his whole career. So some left-handed bats for the Nationals certainly in play tonight. LaRoche, Bryce Harper, Span in the leadoff spot. I think those Nationals lefties are in a good spot. So I like LaRoche at 4,400. Let's see. Who else there was another name in the mid-range that I had wanted to bring up. He's a little bit cheaper on DraftKings. That's Adam Lind. Hits right-handers really well. The only concern would be if Boston brings in a left-handed reliever late in the game. He's batting 069 or 067, something like that against left-handed pitching this year, so he's liable to get lifted for a pinch hitter late in the game if that comes about. But he's 3,400 on DraftKings. That's pretty good if you're trying to get a first baseman that's not too expensive to fit in a pitcher like David Price or Clayton Kershaw tonight. Adam Lind would be a guy that I would look to for $3,400. So it's rare to find a cleanup hitting first baseman that cheap. He's really one of the cheapest first basemen you'll get tonight. If you want to go for super cheap GPP boomer bust guy, Guzman is starting for Houston tonight and batting 5th against a left-hander. He's 2,100, but he hasn't done jack squat all year. Does have some power against lefties, in his past. If you want to take a chance, not something I'd advocate in anything other than a large field GPP. Lind is probably the safest, cheaper option for cash games.
Yep. Unfortunately, not a whole lot to love at first base tonight. I am in agreement with you about that. Though I do think that some guys are in some terrific matchups. I'll go ahead and start with the Toronto first baseman. Both of them are in play for me. Obviously Encarnacion, not a candidate to get pinch hit for, but the savings you get from Lind could be spent elsewhere. I think both are, in a terrific spot to, go yard off of Joe Kelly, your old friend Joe Kelly tonight, who's struggled all year long. More so versus left-handed bats, if I'm not mistaken, but he hasn't been very good by any means against righties. So I do like either of those bats. I love Lind on his price. I'm going to continue to ride him. I know he's been pretty mediocre, but it's hard to pass up that price for a guy that has the proven track record against right-handed pitching and in a hitter's park against a hittable pitcher who struggles versus lefties. That's a recipe for success. After going down after Encarnacion, I'm definitely with you on the Roach. He came in and pinch hit last night, so I don't think the back is too much of a concern. If he's in, I think that they would play it safe, to be honest with you, if they really had any concerns about that back, because he wouldn't need to be out there in the field, especially playing 9 innings if it's a lingering issue. So I think it's behind him. I think LaRoche is in a terrific spot at a very nice price. It's a very attractive price, and it's going to be hard to pass him up at that price range. Going down from there, you've got Chris Carter, who's just all he does is hit home runs. He's got home runs in consecutive games. I liked him last night because I said he would be low ownership percentage. I'm expecting that to be the same way tonight. I think a lot of people will just look at the surface at Pomeranz's numbers and move on. But Houston, and especially Chris Carter, especially the second half of the season, has been absolutely mashing lefties, righties, anything thrown at him. And I think at 4,200, where his price is actually down from yesterday, I believe, you're gonna get a fine play with about as much upside as anyone else on the board. Going down from there, don't sleep on Brandon Moss. I know he's looked horrible at the plate, but Brad Peacock's a guy that is going to have difficulty with these left-handed bats tonight. And Moss, he's going to figure it out once, sooner rather than later. And he's certainly a guy that, he still has 23 home runs, despite I can't remember the last time he hit one. So he's going to go on another one of those tears. I don't have to have him in my lineups tonight. To be honest, I would prefer Carter. But again, it's only a matter of time before Moss figures it out. And then Steve Pearce as well. I like him. He comes in with a terrific WOBA versus lefties. I don't think a lot of people are going to be on any of these Baltimore bats, but they do have the upside to hit home runs, especially in that ballpark. And again, kind of along the same lines as Joseph, Smiley, pretty dominant versus lefties, about average to mediocre against right-handed bats. So I do think there's some upside from a Steve Pearce. Don't sleep on him. And then again, I agree with you. If you have to punt, you can go all the way down to a Jesus Guzman. You know pretty much what you're going to get. It's going to be boom or bust. But again, There is a little bit of upside, and he's batting fifth against a hittable pitcher, in my opinion, in Pomeranz in a hitter's park. So just consider that. Anyone else you want to talk about here?
No, I think that covers first base. Do like Moss too. Glanced over him when I was mentioning my guys. So yeah, agree with him at that price. If you want to take a shot, tonight's probably the night.
Yep. All right, let's go ahead and move on to the keystone position. Who are you liking at second tonight?
I think Altuve stands out pretty good as the top guy. When I was looking up his stats this morning, I saw he has a 425 batting average against left-handed pitching this year. That's pretty insane. We're 5 months deep in the season, and the guy who's basically my size is hitting 425 against lefties. So for sure the number one option for me tonight. I know he doesn't have a ton of pop, but if he gets 4 hits, I mean, the upside's there. He can steal a base even against a left-handed pitcher. He's just fine in this matchup. If he can manage his way on base a few times, certainly will make value. He's down to 3,400. That's his price tag on FanDuel right now, which is probably as cheap as I've seen him since the first month of the season. So Altuve, definitely a guy you want to have on your radar tonight. I know some people are against taking him simply because there's less upside there. But he's got the most fantasy points per game of any second baseman on the board tonight. 4,500 on DraftKings. He was over 5K a couple weeks ago, so no problem with him tonight if you want to roll Altuve out there. Otherwise, I do like Kipnis against Noesi. I'm kind of with you. I'm the same type of player. I like picking on Noesi. He has starts where he just gets blown up. The Indians have been so good against right-handed pitching all year. I think Noesi struggles tonight. So those are kind of the two guys at the top that I'm going for. Some people have asked today if I believe Martin Prado is hitting third for the Yankees tonight. I am not going there. He is. I'm not going there against David Price. He has hit Price well. He did homer off David Price the last time Price started against the Yankees. Not going there tonight. I can see the merit behind it in a GPP, but it's not like he's cheap. I mean, he's 3,800 on DraftKings, so it's not like he's 2K or something like that. So Prado, not a guy that I'm on. I saw some people talking about him in the chat. Same with Valbuena. If you're playing the good spot in the order card, yes, he's batting cleanup. But I can't get excited about Luis Valbuena. Not a guy that gives you a ton of upside. Certainly I think that those guys hitting in those spots are better picks than somebody from Arizona against Clayton Kershaw or something like that. And it's easy to try to make a stretch at second base tonight because it's not a very deep position and hasn't been for a while. But if you're looking for somebody other than the top dogs like Kipnis or Altuve, you can go all the way down to, pick your punt that's in a good spot. Gosselin's hitting second for the Braves. I know you're not his biggest fan. So you can go to Jose Ramirez, who's batting second for Cleveland in that good matchup against Noesi. He's second base and shortstop eligible on DraftKings. He'd probably be my pick. La Stella's in there for the Braves tonight against Wheeler. So you've got some total punts. If you're not spending it up, that's where I'd go. If you're on FanDuel, Howie Kendrick is basically minimum price. Actually, he might not be playing tonight. I think Beckham's in there for the Angels, so scratch that. He's DHing. So Kendrick is DHing and hitting fifth for the Angels. So on FanDuel, if you want to punt, I could go there. I wouldn't mess around with any of those mid-range guys. The 3,200 to 4K guys on DraftKings, that just seems like a wasteland. I'm either going up for one of the studs or punting. There's a bunch of low guys there that are batting second tonight. So.
Yep, no disagreement for me. Although I will say one intriguing, mid-range second baseman that was right below the two guys you mentioned, Brandon Phillips. You talked about Turner's reverse splits. I know that Phillips has been awful all season long, but he's hitting 275 in his last 10 games. Obviously, no home runs, but Turner struggles versus right-handed pitching. Just doesn't have the stuff to really put them away. So Phillips at a moderate price here, FanDuel, everywhere, batting third, I think is an area or a place that I might go tonight. But I'm definitely with you. I got Altuve as my clear-cut number one option. Not really on Rendon or Utley. I do like Kipnis, obviously liking those Indians bats tonight, and I'm with you on the punts. I would prefer La Stella, Jose Ramirez, even your boy Arubarena over Phil Gosselin. But either way, punt's a punt. And, there also could be an Adam Duvall in that Giants lineup if and when it comes out. So he's a guy at 2,300 that has some upside against a terrible left-handed pitcher. Don't overlook him if he draws a start. All right. Anything else?
No, I think we got it.
Let's move on to third base.
So you just mentioned my boy Arubarena. We haven't gotten to my boy yet. I've had to keep this in the whole show. You know who hit the game-winning home run for the Indians last night?
Oh yeah, it's everyone, boy. Trust me, man. Everyone loves this guy.
Zach Walters did it again last night for the Indians. Appears like he's going to be as boom or bust as it gets. I mean, all of his hits are home runs. I think he's got 8 hits in the big leagues, and 6 of them are home runs or something like that. Blasted his 6th last night. 6 home runs in 13 games. So if you extrapolate that over a full season, he's going to hit about 70 homers, challenge the record. I don't know. I mean, he's still 2,700 on DraftKings, so I've got to keep riding the train as the punt third baseman / shortstop until his price finally catches up. Obviously, today's prices don't have yesterday's games reflected in there, but I mean, I could see him going deep again against Noesi. So, look, if you need a cheap play in the middle infield tonight, I guess third base or shortstop, plug Walters in there. He's still cheap everywhere. Don't mess with the power. He's just seems to do it every night. So I know I joke around about it, but in all seriousness, the kid has some power. He's never gonna hit for a high average, but he's always got that chance to go deep. And with the $2,700 price tag, that's pretty much what you're looking for if you're taking somebody down there. So he's your punt. I mean, if you need one at third base or shortstop, really no need to mess around with anybody else. A flyer on the cheap. If you want to go for a little bit more upside, you can go with Chisenhall. I mean, we've seen him have a 3-homer game for the Indians as well. He's down to 3,500. Similar to Brandon Moss, though, he's just kind of been in a funk over the last month or so and doesn't really show any signs of coming out of it. But the good news, if you want to take him, is that his price is down. So basically, you got the Indians at third base. I mean, you've even got Santana that's third base eligible on DraftKings. Lots of guys from Cleveland that you can go for if you want to resist all 3 of those guys, or let's say you've got Santana locked in at catcher. There's not a ton that I like. The price tag on. There's not a ton of other guys I like the price tag on tonight. I already talked about Cabrera at first base. Obviously, third base would probably be a great spot to throw him in there if you want to. But in terms of traditional third baseman, there's not a lot I like tonight. I mean, Sandoval maybe when their lineup comes out, depending on where he's hitting. Maybe Ingurba Solarte if he's at the top of the order again against Gallardo. There's not a lot to get excited about at third base other than the guys that play for the Indians tonight. I know that seems a little weird, but I'm not getting excited about Donaldson against a righty. I do like Todd Frazier. I mentioned him at first base as well. I think the reverse splits of Turner. I guess if I'm picking a non-Indian at third base, Frazier would be the guy I would go for.
All right. Yeah. Quickly on your boy Zach Walters, I was talking with Pepsi before his show earlier, and I was saying with Kershaw, Price, these high-priced guys on the mound, I think of all the people tonight, Zach Walters, if people have been paying attention at least, is going to be the highest-owned guy across the industry because of his price, and it's an easy punt. He's been lighting the world on fire. But I guess my question for you is, we always talk about it with guys that are established. At what percentage do you fade a guy like him? But at what percentage do you fade Zach Walters tonight? Because if Kershaw, Price, if they go off as expected, you can have a serious edge if your punt is able to hit a Zach Walters type home run. So at what percentage, first of all, do you think he'll be owned? on our sponsor DraftKings tonight in some of these GPPs. And are you at all considering fading him?
I would say close to 50. I think 50% is a good number for some larger field tournaments. 40 to 50. I do agree. I think I think that's enough to make him the highest owned hitter of the night. Whether you fade him or not, I mean, I certainly wouldn't do it for my cash games. GPPs, I can see it. I mean, almost what I would do. I mean, it doesn't apply if you're using him at third base. But if you're planning to use Walters at shortstop, you can go to Ramirez instead from the Indians, who's 200 cheaper and batting second. Just because I like the Indians' bats, that's what I'd be doing. Ramirez is going to be less owned than Walters is. Some people are going to take both of them. Some people are going to stack Indians. But that's kind of how I'd play it. Now, if you're at third base, the problem is that you don't have a ton of other guys there. I mean, if you're looking for upside at 2,700, you could go with Will Middlebrooks. Not a fan of him based on his production this year in the matchup with Stroman. But if he hits a home run and Walters goes 0 for 4, I mean, don't get me wrong, the chances are there for Walters to have a bad night. I mean, like I said, he's not going to hit for a high average. And obviously he's not going to hit a home run every night. So what I would do is try to find another third baseman, and then if you want to fade Walters but you still need a punt, you can put Ramirez in at shortstop, or a guy like La Stella, Phil Gosselin at second base, and find yourself another third baseman, or go up to Chisenhall or Frazier or something like that. So I would expect Walters to be 40 to 50% owned. Do you think that's about right?
Yeah, and I'm typically a guy that doesn't really worry too much about what other people are doing. I'm more focused on my lineup. I think that if Walters is 50% owned, that the rest of my lineup should be good enough, or if not better, to be in contention, especially in a GPP. But you kind of hit the nail on the head. In addition to Walters obviously having the potential, everyone can go 0 for 4, and with his ownership percentage, there's just no one else in and around that same price range that offers any upside. So for that reason, I'm pretty much sticking with your boy Walters as my top punt option, though I'm going to perhaps try, if I can, to maybe squeeze in a Matt Dominguez. I know he's batting 7th, but pretty much the same type, boomer bust in the hitter's park versus a lefty. I think that's an alternative punt for a GPP if you're not inclined to play Walters at that position. But going to the top, I do agree it's a tough position tonight. I've got Frazier as my top option, followed by Santana if you're not using them at catcher already. And then I do like Chisenhall's price. And more for cash games, you got Casey McGee down there at 3,100. And then, Dominguez would probably be my top punt, not named Zach Walters. So that's pretty much what I've got. Interesting topic of discussion. You're always curious to hear your thoughts on the, do you fade, card. But again, for me, I just, I slot him in there. Hope he goes off, and then hope the rest of my lineup around it is solid, and can carry me to the top of a GPP. Because again, it's all about upside in the matchups. No one else at that price is even close for me tonight. All right, let's go and move on to shortstop.
Yeah, another position where it's sometimes, especially now, hard to find a guy that you really like the matchup for. The good news is that one of the elite shortstops is back in action. Hanley Ramirez activated off the DL. Does have a nice matchup tonight against Wade Miley. He'll probably give you the most upside of any shortstop on the board in terms of power potential. And, probably best to take a shot on him while he's healthy. So he's probably not going to be healthy for very long. That's kind of the way he rolls. But 4,300, that's as cheap as he's been all year. So I think you'll see a lot of people on Hanley tonight against Wade Miley, a guy that gives up a lot of home runs and pitching in Arizona. That's a pretty friendly park for batters. So Hanley Ramirez is a guy that I like tonight. Certainly I think Reyes will be popular against Joe Kelly. I think those two are probably far and away the best options if you're spending on your shortstop tonight. But certainly don't mind going cheap there. We mentioned you can throw both Walters. You can throw him and or Ramirez at shortstop tonight for a really cheap price tag. Also on DraftKings, a guy we didn't mention at second base, you get Scooter Gennett against Despagne. 3,300 is a really reasonable price tag on him, given his production against right-handed pitching. So I think he's a nice, another. We talked about potentially fading Walters if you want to spend a little bit more. Scooter Gennett has had a great season, and for that price tag, just $600 more, you could slot him in at second base or shortstop on DraftKings if you want to go that route, because that's about as cheap as I would go, other than the guys that we've already talked about being multi-position eligible at other positions.
Yep, I am pretty much with you. One thing I will say, I do have Reyes as my top option, but if you're going to stack Toronto, I think I'm leaving him out tonight. I know you guys have heard me talk about that before. I love his stolen base potential tonight, but he's only going to be stealing bases if it's a close game. So if you're loving Toronto to, put up 10 runs and Stroman to pitch well, then Reyes' upside is limited, and at that price, I just don't see it from him tonight. I'm not buying him being a part of any hit parade, aside from a few singles here or there, maybe a couple RBIs. So as part of a Toronto stack, not liking him, but if you don't have any exposure to Toronto and you want some, I think he's a good guy to get in there, because if he does get on with David Ross and, Joe Kelly not necessarily having a quick move to home plate, I think that's a good combination for some stolen bases tonight. And speaking of stolen bases, you do have the luxury of slotting Billy Hamilton in there. I think he's in a terrific spot tonight. I love him in the outfield, where he's only outfield eligible. Love his stolen base potential. The Cubs, again, it's not Wellington Castillo's fault, but they've been ran on all season long. So I do like Billy Hamilton. Danny Santana also in play, more of a GPP option, but a guy no one will be on at that price. And then going down, I'm with you on Hanley. We'll see how long he lasts. The Dodgers have mismanaged that situation about as horribly as you can. But again, he's probably got the most upside, at least in terms of hitting 2 home runs, of any of the shortstops that I'm seeing tonight. Don't hate Desmond, but I prefer Hanley a little bit more. Washington might be sneaky, but again, they're typical to Atlanta. They're just not a team that you can really rely on. And if Hanley's right and he's healthy, then he's, with Tulo out for the season, the best shortstop in the game in terms of offensive potential. So don't sleep on Hanley, especially if he's in the lineup. I don't anticipate it's going to be another one of those scenarios where he's in there for one at bat, then he gets yanked. But just make sure he's in there, because they might give him a few days rest from time to time.
He's in cleanup. Their lineup just came out a couple minutes ago.
Perfect. So that's a good spot for him, especially against a hittable Wade Miley. And then we mentioned our punts. Don't need to go over them again. Indians guys, liking those guys. I wouldn't venture down below that. I think we're in agreement with that. There's just no upside from any of those guys down there tonight, so I'm not going that route at all. All right. Anything else you want to bring up in terms of shortstops?
I think that's most of them.
All right, let's move on to outfield then.
All right, some options in the outfield tonight. The BVPers are salivating at the fingertips tonight with Scott Van Slyke against Wade Miley. He's 7 for 16 against Miley, I think, with 4 home runs. So Scott Van Slyke, certainly your punt option against a left-handed starter. I believe he's 2,500 on FanDuel, 3,100 on DraftKings. He's in the lineup hitting behind Hanley tonight. He's in the 5-hole for the Dodgers. He's going to have to do his damage early, though. Always a candidate to get pinch hit for if a righty comes in late in the game, especially with Carl Crawford, healthy and on the bench now. They've got Ethier too, so hopefully he can do his damage in limited at-bats. This would have been a case where earlier in the season, when Scott Van Slyke was hot against left-handed pitching, especially against Miley with that good BVP, Scott Van Slyke would have been like 50% owned tonight, maybe even more. I don't think he'll be at that level now. I mean, nobody's really talking about him these days. But I still think he could be a good option for a GPP tonight. given his still solid numbers against lefties, and then the fact that he does hit Wade Miley really well. So that's where I'm going, kind of on the cheap at outfield tonight. There's not a ton of starters kind of in that cheap range. Dominic Brown could be a nice GPP play. He hasn't shown much this year, but does have some pop. Doug Fister doesn't strike a lot of guys out, so I could see him as a GPP play, along with Chris Dickerson for the Indians, but he's batting 8th. So I would, prefer to kind of keep it at Vance-like or higher in terms of my outfielders tonight. I like the A's outfield this evening. Crisp is a little bit expensive on DraftKings. 4,700 seems kind of high. Even Sam Fuld seems a bit expensive. But the A's give you so much flexibility because you can roster a guy like Brandon Moss in the outfield if you like somebody else at first base. You can even roster Stephen Vogt in the outfield. Those guys are hitting 4 and 5 tonight. It's all in how you want to construct that around. It seems like every time we're on the air is a good matchup for those Washington lefties, so I'm compelled to mention Bryce Harper again with his still discounted price tag and the fact that Kendrick struggles with left-handed bats. Denard Span, price dependent. I mean, if he's still super, super expensive, it's hard for me to pay up for him, but let's see if I can get where he's at on draft. He's 4,300 on DraftKings, so he has come down some. That's 500 more expensive than Harper. I could get behind taking him tonight, just given Kendrick's awful numbers against lefties. I think you'll see Giancarlo Stanton highly owned again. I mean, the Marlins against the lefty, and Stanton has just been absolutely crushing the ball of late. He's the most expensive hitter for a reason, and his numbers against left-handers this year are off the charts. We talked about him when we were on together on Monday night and agreed that he'd probably be the highest owned outfielder. If he wasn't, he was close. They walked him twice, and then once Rasmus came into the game, I believe it was, gave up that mammoth home run to Stanton. So, another decent matchup tonight. I know Santiago's been much better since his recall from AAA for the Angels, but Stanton's matchup proof, especially against lefties. And I like Carlos Gomez as well for the Brewers. And I like their outfield against Espana. I think they'll go kind of unnoticed tonight. And then Hunter Pence from the Giants would be another kind of mid-range pick. Hasn't done a ton of damage against lefties this year, but Morales just struggles a whole lot against right-handed bats. So there's lots of options. Those are the guys that kind of catch my eye at first glance tonight.
Okay. It's really whatever way you want to go, whatever way for me that your research leads you. I do love Stanton, but I also love Ozuna. And, I just like in all these different pairs of outfielders. You've got Adam Jones, Nelson Cruz. If you've got the salary to pay up for it, Billy Hamilton, Jay Bruce. Love Jay Bruce tonight. We talked about Turner's reverse splits, but he can't strike lefties out. That's another area that he struggles, mightily in short sample size this year, but still worth noting. He's only striking out lefties at a 7.6% clip. So Bruce, who's a high strikeout guy, that boosts his value for me, in addition to his ability to steal a base if he needs to late in that game. I'm not really necessarily going to go out and say full-on stack all the Reds, but I liken Bruce and Billy Hamilton for their respective, Bruce with his power, Hamilton with his speed tonight. I think that Cincinnati's going to bounce back and get the victory tonight. And then, obviously, you've got the Toronto Bats, should be popular play again, and the Dodgers. Don't sleep on them. Kemp, Puig, and Van Slyke, all coming in at a relative discount. If I had to choose between the two, I would lean Puig and Van Slyke. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, that they're the two cheapest from the Dodgers. And I'm with you on Bryce Harper. Kyle Kendrick, he sucks. We all know that. And then if you need some value, you got Delman Young. Again, another one of these cheap Baltimore guys that one of them is going to hit a home run tonight, if not all of them, like they did the other night.
Yeah.
But
nobody was on them. Nobody was on them the other night.
Yeah. And then you've also got some other cheaper options down there. You've got Jake Marisnick from Houston. Chris Coghlan, $3K. I think if you're not on Matt Latos at all tonight, I know he's been very effective versus left-handed pitching. But if Coghlan gets on, he's going to be off to the races, similar to Billy Hamilton. Could be a race for stolen bases instead of runs in this game, because who knows if anyone's going to drive him in. But I do like Coghlan at that price in a GPP because of his upside. He's got a little pop, and he can certainly steal it back. And then you've also got towards the bottom, the only two guys that I'm really liking, not even really liking, but just offering them as an example. You've got Chris Dickerson from Cleveland, and the guy we mentioned at first base, Jesus Guzman at 2,100. So that's all I got. Anything else you want to add here?
I like Brantley too. I don't think I mentioned him, but we've beaten the dead horse with the Cleveland Bats tonight. They're all good plays.
Yeah, and Brantley, kind of struggling a bit here, but again, his price is starting to come down. It was above 5K for a while.
Yeah.
He's still hitting 300, so he's still consistent. Maybe he needs to hit up a slump buster and get out of that slump. But either way, he's in a terrific spot.
Is that a steroid reference or not?
It's not a steroid reference, but slump buster is.
Was that
I'm gonna get in trouble for this.
A personal reference?
It's slump buster is when you go out with your teammates and you find the biggest, heaviest, not so pretty girl, and you take her home with you. That's the slump buster. And,
nice way to put it.
Back in my playing days, I will say from experience, it works. So that's all I'm going to say before I get 86th here off the program. But
we already have to look for a new host to replace Peter because he's going to. In all seriousness, with what I said earlier was not serious. Peter's a great guy, and certainly he loves what he does with us here at Roto Grinders. So if anybody took that seriously, I'm sure he's still going to be around doing shows, and especially with football, I know he's really excited about that. So
big time.
Hopefully took that serious.
Yep, maybe he'll be broadcasting from his new man cave.
Yeah, that's right.
He decides to spend all that good stuff. All right, that's going to wrap it up for us. We're a minute past time. I want to thank you guys for tuning in. And STL, you want to sign off with anything?
Yeah, good luck tonight, everybody. Should be an interesting night with all those stud pitchers out there. Could make or break the night if you pick the right ones. So especially when you got to roll two of them out there. So good luck in all your matchups. We'll be back at you again tomorrow with our same old content, and don't miss the first episode of the College Football Show. College Football After Dark will be tomorrow night. That's usually with DB and Chop. Head Chopper's still traveling back from the Bahamas, so I'm going to sub for him tomorrow, and then I'll be on with EMAC again Saturday morning for the College Football Show. Posted a new series with Dan on the homepage, so check it out. We're doing a college football playbook show where we just do little 5-6 minute segments on quarterbacks, running backs, receivers. We're going to roll out the quarterbacks every Wednesday, running backs every Thursday, wide receivers every Friday. Just a little 5-minute video, a little college football preview. So college football starts tomorrow night. Really excited to bring some of that stuff to you. It's my favorite sport. So if you guys are hankering to play some college football, try something a little different than MLB, check out all of our stuff, and hopefully you'll like it. So good luck tonight, everybody. For Boggs, thanks for joining us. Have a good one.